Hello and welcome to the Soccer Business Podcast. I'm Simon Evans, and with me this week is a very special guest, former Manchester United and England defender turned TV pundit turned content creator, Rio Ferdinand. Rio, thanks very much indeed for joining the pod.
Hey, how you doing? You good, Simon?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Very good. So I'm interested to talk to you about this decision you made to switch from primarily being a TV pundit with TNT Sport. You did pretty much a decade of that, BT Sport before that, to focus really on your own productions, your own digital content, your YouTube, Rio Ferdinand Presents. That was a big decision. When did you start thinking about making that switch?
Probably 6 months ago. I've obviously lived and breathed football as a football player, also as a pundit for God knows how long now, 30 odd years, which has been a phenomenal journey in that sense. But at the same time, it's an ever-evolving world now, and a lot of things have changed, and landscapes change in the game. Technology has become a massive part of it, and content and digital content is becoming a more prominent part of the game year in, year out. And as I said, when I was about 27, 28, I started a digital magazine, which was a lifestyle magazine, sport, entertainment, fashion, and I was interviewing people like sports stars like LeBron James and Roger Federer, or artists like 50 Cent or Drake and people like that around that time, with an eye on media post my football career. So I was always had an eye open as to what I was going to do. And that just kind of morphed into being a YouTube channel, because that was the way the media and the content world went, from magazine to doing visual content, which is video content. So yeah, it was for me, it was just a natural progression. Being a manager and a coach was my dream, but obviously personal situations kind of put that to bed, and I made a decision to kind of go into the content world. And the punditry has been great, and working with BT and then latterly TNT has been phenomenal for me. It's been a great 10 years of my life. But now the game's a global game, 24/7, always on, and my Rio Presents digital proposition is something that lives and breathes and speaks to that. And that's what I want to really make this. I want this to be the vessel that football fans can use to come closer to the game, get closer to players, managers, the inner workings of football and football clubs.
I mean, one of the things that I would imagine is a little bit frustrating, certainly offers different opportunities with the digital side, is that, you know, a game finishes, you're expected to sort of make your points and sum it up in 45 seconds, 1.5 minutes maximum. You could talk for half an hour about that game and make your points, which of course you can do with your YouTube. Was there a bit of frustration that, you know, and things get chopped up even smaller after the shows, don't they? A lot of stations do that as well these days. That everything's going sort of short and snappy, which works on YouTube Shorts. But if you're trying to make a point and help people understand better what's going on the field tactically and through the player's perspective, which is why we listen to people like you, was there a little bit of a frustration or too big a difference between what's going on digital?
I think that's the nature of the beast, though. When you go on live sport, you do have a minimal amount of time because of the advertising and adverts that come along that have to be played, which make it then you have to be concise, you have to be quick with your points. And it's not always easy to get intricate points that are around tactics, especially across to the general public. And you've got on, I always thought about it, there's Bill and Bob and Brenda on a sofa watching the game, and they're actually passive viewers, but I've got to try and make it layman's terms for those people that aren't the everyday fan, that are absolutely immersed in football. I've got to make it as easy as possible for those people to understand, and to do that in a limited amount of time does make it difficult. That is a difficulty. I appreciate that. But one of the big things around this as well, I was only speaking to a UK audience when I was doing this. This is another thing that really excites me about doing the Rio Presents podcast. This is a global affair. I'm going to be traveling around the world, going to different areas, different people, different cultures, and really immersing myself in those football environments. And that's a key difference to what I was doing for the last 10 years. Yes, I've enjoyed it, but you are kind of... You're in a room most of the time, or you're on location just at a stadium, which is great. But I'm ready to do something a bit different and a little bit more kind of exhilarating.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting on a Premier League match day on a Saturday, say the main sort of fixtures, 5 or 6 fixtures. Here in America, we're watching that game at 10 o'clock in the morning. People in Asia are watching it at midnight. Um, but we're all watching the same thing in a different part of the world. Yet
Yeah.
the punditry is very similar wherever you turn. I mean, the NBC do a great job with their with their coverage, but the punditry is conventional. It's exactly what you'd see on most TV channels in the UK or anywhere else. It's the same if you watch the World Feed, the Premier League's World Feed that goes around that most of the world is watching, and yet there you can have that second screen experience where if you want to go deeper, or you want a different take, or you want a specific take on your club, which seems to be doing very well for some people, there's that opportunity. So do you see yourself in a position that you could be doing like that sort of live content where you're basically talking to the Premier League world or the Champions League world?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a big pull as well, and I think that having the ability to speak beyond um, a confined amount of people because of the rights that corporation that you have are working with
Mm.
is definitely something that's going to be a bonus. And again, the way people consume content is different in every part of the world. And being
Right.
able to be a bit of a chameleon in that sense and appeal to different people around the world. And again, we have the technology to be able to look at the demographics of who we're talking to, who are our biggest supporters online, and you can kind of make sure you talk to everybody. Also, we haven't got the constraints of one, a big corporation behind us, but two, that a script just being produced by a director. We're
Yeah.
very off the cuff, and we can kind of go and let it go where the conversation leads us, really, without any restrictions of worrying about advertising or rules, etc. So that's another added bonus as to doing what you do in this digital world, because again, like the authenticity is a massively important thing for us.
Yeah, I mean it's revolutionising things, really, isn't it? And you see things like watch-alongs and live shows, some of which work really well, some of which don't. Some people find it difficult. Of my generation, the idea of having a second screen, but for a younger people, having another screen with chat going on is completely normal way of watching a football match, isn't it? The people in that space, they talk about talking with the fans rather than talking to the fans like a broadcaster would. And I noticed when you were traveling around the States with United's friendly, you were interacting a lot with fans literally in the stadium there, even if they were wearing a Liverpool shirt in some cases. Like, but have you thought about that kind of live stream watch along content? Is that something that's on the agenda?
Well, yeah, I've been thinking about it for a number of years, really, but as I said, it didn't materialize for whatever reason. But that's something, again, we got no restrictions now. We can do that, and that's something I'm sure you'll see us doing. Um, we'll definitely be adding that to our World Cup program. Um, but it's again, this is something in a year's time. Doing that might not be the thing. That might not be the hook. So we have to make sure we're nimble and able to kind of adapt to as and when things are starting to change. But the live watch-alongs are something right now that are really kind of kicking off, and some, like you say, some are doing them well, some aren't. But it's a new space, so it's good to see. I actually enjoy it, and I think I look at my kids as kind of sometimes they're my marker. My kids, to
Mm,
get them to watch a whole 90 minutes live football is quite difficult uninterrupted. They're normally
mm.
on their phone half the game, missing most of the big moments, and watching the replays. So, get that second screen can be of huge importance for that generation.
Yeah, yeah, post match and pre match as well, being able to do stuff. I mean, if you support a team as well, I find it interesting. Being a Burnley fan is that we on nationwide television you get very little coverage of your team if you support a team like Burnley, but the digital world opens up the possibility
Yeah,
of
definitely.
diving in depth into different clubs. It does mean, though, I mean, there's lots of pros to what you're talking about, Rio, but it does mean you've got to have an operation, haven't you? You've got to build a business around this. You've got to work for the money in the sense that it's not just a paycheck coming. You've got to find the partners and advertisers and sponsors. What sort of team have you built around this? How big is it?
Yeah, we have got a team full. Firstly, I own a football agency which has like 85, 90 players and managers.
Right.
Um, and then an extension of that is the commercial arm. And an extension of that is when I decided to get into media, is a media element of our company. So we look after pundits, we consult for big corporations to go and recruit pundits and presenters, etc., for their platforms. So that's a big part of the business. And then an extension of that is creating our own media model on a platform like YouTube, which is Rio Presents. So that all requires manpower, woman power, whatever you want to call it, but it requires bodies. And so we have about probably 30 people within the organisation at the moment, and that's growing on a rapid basis. A lot of part-timers as well that come in and work ad hoc for each individual kind of project that we're doing. But it's yeah, and what I love about it is learning what the cameramen are doing, the editorial guys are doing, the producers doing, but also then how are the commercial team going out and getting the right deals that
Mhm.
fit the product that we're producing here, and what are the levels? Why is it that number? Well, what's the algorithm telling us? What is the data telling us? Like all of that type of stuff. I love getting beneath that. How do we incorporate AI into what we're doing to kind of make this a lot more efficient and
Mm.
effective and quicker? So all of these things kind of all for me blend into one, as well as seeing me on the camera. I love all aspects of this. And the business side, as I said, I've got my eye on all of that and hands over it. So it's good.
Yeah. So the agency is a traditional players
Yeah.
management agency. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we manage all those players, and again, we've just had a reshuffle of the pack to make it a much younger player base profile, which is really good. And we've done some great work in this window. We do a lot of consulting for clubs as well, which is great. But um, the business side of football, I think, and sport really is something that I've been interested in for a long time, whether it be through investing or having equity in certain companies, has definitely been something where my eyes have always been.
Yeah. I mean, we're starting to see a bit more of that, but I mean, you were one of the first players really to take that sort of attitude of before the end of your career. You were already looking at business opportunities, as you were saying. And it was pretty rare. I mean, I used to work in Italy, and I remember Clarence Seedorf, when he was playing for
Yeah.
AC Milan, he was really into that. He had like 3 or 4 businesses that he bought in Italy while he was still playing,
Mm.
in midfield for Ancelotti's team, and it was managing to starting to build his team of people around him and so on. We start to see a bit more of that now, but do you think that's we're going to see that be a regular part of players when they get to say 27, that they have to start thinking about this?
I think some of them are doing it earlier. I think you look at someone like Jude Bellingham, absolutely sees himself as a brand, and rightly
Right,
so. Starts a YouTube channel, documenting some of his goings on in his life, and I think that's a signal of things to come. I think Bex has been great at that over the years as well. More commercially driven than probably content at times. Um, but I think it's definitely a step where you're seeing a lot more players now that are documenting stuff. Social media has been a big driver of that as well. Players
right.
opening up their private life a little bit to all of that. But I don't. I think it'll be the American game. I think, or the American sports have been a real leader in that. In seeing the guys over there really embrace media and
Mm.
understand that media is one of the biggest drivers of income for sportsmen and women post career.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you look at there's some good examples. I mean, Manning brothers, what they've done
Yeah,
with their Omaha Productions is
yeah.
has been really impressive.
Tom
Are you
Brady with
quite
his
into
presenting stuff.
yeah? Are you quite into American sports? Have you always had an interest in
Yeah,
the
I love
scene
it.
over
I
here?
love NFL. I love NBA. Them two are my main sports that I love over there. And I've watched NFL since it was on Channel 4 in the UK, like for
Yeah,
years, like on a Sunday. So I've always watched it. But the NBA, obviously, the players were always the big kind of draw. Seeing those like superstars, beasts play football, just like out of they're not natural looking human beings. They're 7 foot tall and being able to move the way they do. It just always amazed me. But the skill set that these guys have, I've always admired that.
yeah, and they are much better. At the post career stuff in a lot of ways than European footballers have been. Not always. There's always these horror stories about people who lose all their money from their career as well. But
But
do
you
you?
know what? Sorry, Simon. Just on that, do you know, I've always thought that with America, they've always embraced media. They understood, and I think that's the difference. I think that the the clubs and then the players all understand the importance of the media. Whereas in Europe, especially, I think it's more we see the media as a hindrance or an enemy, and we don't correlate that the money that is generated for these players and these clubs is driven a lot by the media. if you played the game right. And we're only just
Yeah,
starting to see the benefits of that.
yeah. I think over here they learn it at a very young age because I've been at a few sort of the big college finals in American football, college football, and all the players, even the backup like running back who doesn't get on the field, is a confident talker in an interview, and it's clear that even in high school they've been taught how to approach the media to see it as something positive in their life. The fact that you could go in, when I used to cover the Miami Heat, I could go into the locker room before the game, never mind after it as well, and talk
But
to
you got
LeBron
like
James.
March Madness. You got March.
Yeah,
That's obviously with the colleges and stuff. And you're going like, these guys are on TV. They're like primetime TV. So like they've got to be ready. So from a young age, they're used to accepting that media is part of it. Whereas it's not. It's like it's frowned upon if young kids are doing any media here.
is it still in the dressing rooms? Is there still that sort of attitude that the media are a bit? You got to be a bit wary of them. You got to watch. You got to watch yourself with the media because we don't get much chance to talk to players in a sort of personal setting. Like, I mean, I was lucky when I was in Italy that it was still at that end of that period where you could sit down and have a coffee with Gattuso at Milan's training ground or something, where without having to go through, his agent and the press officers and so on. That's probably finished there as well. But do you think that's likely to change, or is that wariness of the media just inbuilt into the football culture in England?
I think in the culture is here, like you say. I think it's very much like the media are seen as almost like they're a I don't know, like a chirpy associate over there.
Right.
I think they were definitely the enemy 10 years ago, but I think they're like the chirpy associate who we can't get too close, keep them at arm's length. And I think that's where I can bridge the gap, and I do bridge the gap. And you see a lot of the interviews that we've done and the access that we get at clubs and at games is very different to what you'd see from the conventional media. And that's just because I've played the game. A lot of the guys know me, and they know deep down I want players and teams to do well and excel in whatever capacity they're playing in. So that gets me the in. But then obviously you've got to be able to go and do an interview and speak to these guys on a level. And as I said, that's where I take pride in doing that.
Do you think players are getting better advice now? I mean, we just mentioned in passing how, there's always been these horror stories of players who lose everything that they made during their career. Do you think that the people who are talking to players now, and the fact that maybe there are more ex-players going into business now who can go back and speak to a player on their level, are they getting better advice, or are there still those sort of people around who say, "Oh, you want to invest in this hotel? It's going to do fantastic," and then people get caught out?
No, I still think there's huge pitfalls, and I think there's loads of horror stories still in the game.
Really?
It's unfortunate, but I think that the players are huge targets. There's huge sums of money now washing around in the game, more so than ever. Um, so that there's more sharks in that pond.
Right.
And I think there's more agents, there's more advisors, but no, not necessarily better ones. That's
Right.
the problem, and I think they advise these players. I mean, that's why I set up my agency, because I wanted players treated in the right way. I wanted players to understand and have transparency in everything that they do, for them and their families to be aware of conversations and what deals are being put on the table. And I think there's a lot of the agency world is shrouded in kind of like miscommunication and grey areas that are created to hide things. And that not just agents, but also financial advisors. That
Mm.
kind of bad advice and shark environment is very prevalent, and I think it's still the same and very similar to what it was in my time.
Really, that's disappointing. Yeah,
Mm.
I mean, it's starting to become an issue over here. I think with soccer, with the sort of growth we've seen over here in America the last 5 or 6 years, where there's a lot more deals going on, even at the lower levels. There's a lot more money in the game. There's more going on, and suddenly you go on LinkedIn and it's like you're bombarded by 200 FIFA agents, and you look at the backgrounds and you think, I'm not seeing much evidence there that these
Yeah,
people are really, you know what I mean? You see,
yeah,
you
yeah.
see that, and it's obviously going to arrive here as well with a lot of young
Do you know?
players
Do you
coming
know? Do
from.
you know the thing, Simon? The doing a deal. I don't think you have to be a football person to do a deal, to do a contract for a player. The difference is, and the speciality is being able to understand what that player's going through. What are the pitfalls that are coming down the pipe? Where's your experience in understanding that and preparing a young player or an inexperienced player as to what is possibly coming down and how they prepare themselves for them outcomes that are going to happen? And also it's okay, and I think it'll be quite easy for any person that understands how to make deals to do a deal for a football player when they're at the top of their game. And that's a very small percentage of players that are at the top of their game all the time to get a deal. The vast majority of players, you're having to scrape around for deals, have contacts in the game, who needs what, where, and when. And that comes with experience and knowing people and having a network within football to make sure you can execute for those players, because the majority of the players are are going to need a lot of help and a lot of assistance, and they're going to need a lot of experience around them. And so, as I said, I think it can get very murky for some players when they're not at the top of their game, when it was all going well. But then when the chips are down a little bit, where are you going to go? What advice are you going to get? What support system and network have you got around you then?
Do you think it's regulated properly enough?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it is. And I think sometimes, again, greed plays a big part in this industry, and that's what I've found becoming an owner of an agency, that you see and hear so many stories. Ignorance, emotion sometimes comes into it too often. Yeah, and sometimes I think there's a lack of respect within the game in that sense. But again, you'd like to think that the good guys, the honest guys, the transparent guys, rise come the end of play.
Yeah. Have you ever thought of going into owning a club? I mean, some of your old teammates have gone down that route, and in the States, we're obviously seeing a lot of people from different sports coming into English football and other forms of soccer ownership. Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, I think that's long term something I'd love to get involved in. I think I've had a couple of opportunities in past years, but it's never been the right fit or the right time. But I don't look here and go, no, that's not something I want to do. I think one day maybe, but right now I've got my fingers in quite a few pies, and I need to make sure that they stir the right way.
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing, you talk about the other sports in America and so on. We're seeing quite a lot of people from the NFL and the NBA actually coming
Mm,
in these minority investors role where they're not really owning the club, as an
mm.
absolute owner. But what do you think of that trend?
Yeah, it totally makes sense, and I think with the Americans, I spoke to a couple of the owners at Chelsea, and my first question was, "Why are you buying an English football club?" And you're from the States, and they said, "Listen, we don't think that they've scratched the surface yet in England with commercialising the sport or the clubs individually. So they see huge uplift in that area, and they're great at it in America. That's what they're great at. As I
Mm.
said, the NFL has less viewers, less eyeballs than football." Or than the Champions League or the World Cup, but they generate so much more money than us in that game, and I understand it totally. I sat and had a coffee with Tom Brady when he was doing the takeover of Birmingham City,
Yeah.
um, and these guys are curious to see what it's like. They're going all in. They're taking the plunge. They're being brave in that respect. So you've got to respect that, and some of them are turning it into real successes. Look at Wrexham. The money they're generating now has
Incredible.
been phenomenal.
No, it is amazing to see that, and the amount of people in America who know about Wrexham and and,
Mm.
and follow their games as well. I mean, just on that American soccer side of things, I mean, you were over here for pre-season United games. Been a busy summer over here as well with the Club World Cup, obviously. What's your impressions of like MLS and American soccer in general and the way the game is sort of growing here? Do you think it's getting there, or are you impressed by it, or there's still some reservations?
I think just being there in this summer when the tour was on was amazing for me, because the fandom there, the amount of fans outside the training ground, it was much more than when I went as a player, and you can see the growth there just in the fandom.
Mm.
Um, the MLS as a product, I think, is obviously getting Messi has been a big coup. Um, and you look at that, you got, I think Son might be going now to the LA
Yeah,
team over there. So you're
Thomas
still getting
Muller.
some huge names after the likes of Beckham and Gerrard, Lampard, Rooney, etc. have been out there. But uh, I think when you see the way that it's maybe consumed, I think being behind a paywall with Apple, I think was a wrong move.
Right.
Um, in you're just closing off eyeballs um, in that sense for a check, and I think you want it to go to as many people as possible. Um, but I don't know. I'm still waiting to see where your super talent's coming from. Where's the development of your own talent? Where's the young American Lamine Yamal? I think Man City have got one who they're pinning their hopes on at the moment.
Yeah, Sullivan from Philadelphia. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's one there but he's obviously still got stuff to do to prove that. But as I said, Pulisic was one they were pinning their hopes on. But as I said, when you start developing a rafter of big talent and developing that, and then exporting that, and then doing some really great things, I think it's going to really drive the game back home again.
They need an American superstar, in short, don't
Yeah,
they? Really. I
definitely.
think that's always been the case. That's why they got ridiculously carried away about Freddie Adu.
Yeah, and I think more now than ever, because fans now, especially the next generation, our generation, we've pinned everything to our club. I think this generation pin everything to a player. So if that player plays for 4 different clubs, they've supported 4 clubs in their time.
Mm.
If Lamine Yamal leaves Barcelona and goes to PSG, then he goes to Man United, and then he goes to Flamengo in Brazil. There'll be millions of young fans that have supported all those 4 clubs.
They follow them all the way through, don't they? Yeah. Yeah. Just before we finish, Rio, when you were talking about the move into media from playing and into business and so on, what advice are you giving to your players that you deal with through your agency about what they should be doing mid-career to get ready? I mean, obviously players just want to focus on what's on the field, don't they? But what sort of advice are you giving them, and what advice do you give particularly about working in the media?
I think when you play football's your passion. 99% of the players is that. But I would say, I think, get that right first. I think get your career, your footballing career on point where you know how to get yourself ready for every eventuality. Then you can start looking, and that normally comes after 25 years old, where you can start having a bit more time to look at other stuff. Then what's your other passion outside? Because we've all got another passion somewhere. What is that? What excites you? What will keep you up at night outside of just a game? And then maybe start honing in and focusing on that a little bit, and just doing your reading, doing your research, doing an analysis of different industries or different areas that you think, you know what, that could be an area that I'm going to go into. And I think I always say this, I had my eye on probably 4 or 5 different eventualities in retirement, which one was coaching, one was F&B, having a restaurant and building that out. One was my own foundation that's still running for the last 10 or 12 years. One was a media company and doing like interviews and media out in the game. And I think there might have been another one, I can't remember, but one was a fashion line. So I had like 4 or 5 different avenues to go down when I retired from the game, and I wasn't hell-bent on just one. Yeah. I wanted to give myself options, or at least have an ability to then start focusing once I retired on one of those 5 that I really feel I've got a huge passion for, but I've already started the foundations of that while I was playing. And that's the advice I'd normally give to kids, but also to build a good team around yourself that they can help alleviate all of that heavy lifting, especially early on. And that's what we've created here at New Era, is a really good, solid team. Everyone knows their roles. No one's the king of the hill. We're all mucking in, which is great. And you're able then to kind of look at stuff. You've been nimble and look at different things. And if you want to pivot into different stuff, you can do, because you've got a team that can help you do that heavy lifting, as I said.
Thanks. Can't let you go without asking you about this next season. Are United fans going to get a little bit more joy? Are there signs of progress there?
I think there'll be progress, and I think progress for me will be a top 8 finish. I've seen enough in the pre-season to feel that the culture and environment seems in a better place this season. The only worry for me or concern right now would be the first 6 games. Fixture list looks very difficult. If we can navigate those and come out of that with decent points on the board, and when we haven't shattered confidence with a few heavy defeats, then I think we could go into the season with some good optimism.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much indeed for your time today, Rio. That's been really insightful. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, Simon. Take care. Love the show.
If you're enjoying this podcast, why not sign up to our weekly newsletter at thesoccerbusiness.com for news, analysis and data on the North American soccer business world.